Do not give up on the business. Operationalize the business. That's the hard work. Do the hard work so that you earn your pivot, so that you end up on the other side stronger and better, so that you take the lessons you've learned and you move it into the next chapter of your life. Welcome to the Jasmine Star Show, where we talk about business, specifically branding, marketing, and today we're going to talk about pivoting. This is the Jasmine Star Show, and I'm so happy you're here. Furthermore, I want to take a second and a moment of truth. I am here because of you. Specifically, this podcast would not be possible without you. Your questions, you being here, your feedback, your direct messages, your podcast reviews, just shout out and thank you for that. So a little bit of behind the scenes. I leverage Instagram to really connect with business owners. I have done some of my most powerful networking and business opportunities on the back of Instagram. So shout out Meta for opening those doors. But specifically, the thing I find the most valuable is when I get a DM from you. So thank you for that. I recently put out on Instagram a question and answer poll. And I said, I want to do a flash fire Q&A session. And I want to share those questions on the podcast. So that's what I led with. And the craziest thing happened. Oftentimes when I put out these like flash fire Q&A calls for questions, there's a mix of questions. But in this particular batch, there was a common theme. And that common theme rose very close to the top. And it was pivoting your business, how to know when and what to avoid. Those were the common questions. And I thought to myself, this podcast episode is literally coming from you, by you, and for you. So we're going to start with Helly. A shout out HB Lyle 3. HB Lyle 3. Okay, I'm probably messing up your name. It's Helly. Helly? She asked, what's the best piece of advice you have been given? And this came from my mentor, Susan. She said, you have to earn the right to pivot. And before, in the early parts of my career, I would just simply say, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to pivot without actually understanding what it meant. So if you're wondering how you earn the right to pivot, we're going to break it down. Number one, you're going to earn the right to pivot by way of consistency. If you are not consistent with how many at-bats, if you're not consistent with your content, if you're not consistent with your efforts, if you're not consistent with your marketing, if you're not consistent with your sales, if you're not consistent with your branding, well, then we're going to have to take a big step back. And have you earned the right to pivot? And we're actually going to clarify and define what pivoting actually means so that we remain on the same page for the rest of the episode. But after you have been consistent, you want to make sure that you have honed in that focus. You can look back at any experience and say, it was undiluted focus. I put all of my time and energy. I gave 100% of my effort to get 100% of an outcome. If I like the outcome or not, at least I knew I focused on it 100%. And the third way you earn your pivot is by putting in the reps. It's one thing to be consistent, right? Showing up with continuity. And it's one thing to focus on that consistency, but you have to be willing to do it again and again and again to say, I've earned the right to pivot. And the fourth of the fifth step of earning this right, like how do we earn the right, is you're going to learn a lesson and then you're going to take an action and then you're going to get a result. And the more lessons you learn, and let me tell you, learning a lesson, 9 times out of 10, the lesson you're learning is not fun, right? Like we learn a lesson so that we know what not to do again. And then we take an action and we're not actually quite sure if that action will yield the result we want. So we wait for the result. And if we don't get the result we want, guess what happens? We have to go back and learn a lesson again so that we take a different action and we get a different result. This is how you earn a right to pivot. Consistency, focus, doing the reps. Based on doing those reps, what lessons are you learning? What actions are you taking? What results are you getting? And lastly, how you earn the right to pivot is there's nothing left to fix. You have fixed everything there is to fix. Now, how you earn the right is that you operationalize a business, a venture, an idea, and that's better than being over it. Oftentimes what I hear are people's like, I want to pivot. And I ask why. And it's like, I'm just over it. What? You have not earned the right to pivot because you're over it, honey. You need to operationalize it. When you operationalize it and then you realize it's still not working, you have earned the right to pivot. Because what is a pivot? The definition of a pivot is a strategic shift within an existing framework, leveraging existing skills and knowledge to move in a new direction. Okay. That was really fancy words, but let me hone in on something. Leveraging existing skills and knowledge. within an existing framework. It is a strategic shift in a framework, leveraging skills and knowledge. That's a pivot. If you move away from something because you're over it, I don't know if you have enough skills and knowledge. You earn the right to a pivot by taking what you have learned and done and put in the reps and have stayed focused and stayed consistent and all those lessons and the actions and then the results you got. Good for you. Did it suck? Maybe. But you have earned the right to build upon it. What I see a lot of people doing is saying, well, I'm pivoting, but if you're pivoting from a very shaky foundation, the next foundation is likely to be shaky too. So once you have done this, you can earn the right to your pivot. What I don't want people doing is changing direction, because will you actually take what you have learned from the previous thing and apply it to the new thing? Because if you didn't learn the lesson the first time, you're going to be repeating the same dang mistake again and again. And then you ask yourself, why am I always in this place? Why am I always stuck? Well, did you learn the lesson you were supposed to? Because if you didn't learn the lesson the first time around, guess what? It's going to rear its head. Okay. Now I should probably soften it up a little bit because somebody came out of the gate like charging. But I'm just saying, if we're going to have a real conversation about pivoting, I'm going to deal it to you straight. I have seen people do it really well, and I've seen people really struggle. So that was just the real. So Hallie, thank you for asking that question. Second question of the pivoting bunch is from lowstart_photography. She asked, how did you prepare yourself for the pivot? How did you execute the pivot in your business? Pivoting where your business is, what service you offer. So this is like a multitude of questions. So let's just begin by parsing them out. So how do we begin the pivot? We lessen owner dependency, which basically means you have to work yourself out of a job. You have to stop doing a lot of what it is you're doing. So how do you lessen owner dependency? How do you make the business not totally dependent on you? Well, you systematize. You think of this like an operation manual for your business. Like if I were to go into your business and I would not know what to do in your business, that means that the business is entirely dependent on you. I am really proud to say that now, basically an operations manual of our business, so that if I were to hire you to come in and serve in customer success, if I were to hire you to come in and serve as my executive assistant, if I were to have you come in and serve as a marketing manager, you literally would go to an operation manual, an SOP, standardized operating procedures, and you would open it and you'd begin to immediately know what to do. That means the business isn't dependent on me. It's simply dependent on how quickly we could hire and get somebody in that role. That's what we mean by systematized and lessening owner dependency. The next way that you're preparing for your pivot is leadership. Who is going to be replacing you in that role? So I was head of marketing for years in the organization because I was the strongest at marketing. But I realized that I was more powerful to the business if I was preparing people to take over that role so I could step more into visionary. So I actually had to draft, who is this person? What skills do they need to have? What am I looking for? And what kind of test could I give them to show the strength of what it is that they say they know what to do? The third piece of lessening owner dependency is your growth plan. So we'll have a quick repeat. You want to systematize, you want to figure out the leadership structure, and then you want the growth plan. How does the business grow without you? If your business only grows because you are the person showing up all the time, that means the business is totally dependent on you. What marketing do you have in place that's not dependent on you creating new stuff in new ways all the time? How does the business grow without you? So you prepare for a pivot by removing yourself from the business. As a personal example, the first time I had pivoted, I had made the decision to pivot from solely photography into creating digital resources for business owners. At the time, I had a photography side of the business that was bringing in multiple six figures of revenue. And I also had a digital store selling photography resources. But I was the person who was doing the operations. I was the person doing the marketing. I was the person leading. And I realized that if I wanted to pivot, take all of the lessons that I had learned from what? From being consistent, by staying focused, by learning lessons and taking actions and getting different results, by putting in the reps. I had done all of that already in this business. Like I had maxed out and I said, there's no more that I can do here. I want to pivot. In order for me to pivot, what did I need to do? Systematize. I needed to figure out who was leading. I need to figure out how the business was going to grow without me always pushing that. So I prepared for my pivot by replacing myself in the business. I had brought in editors and resources and who was going to be submitting my work for content. I had replaced myself in that so I had more time to build out the next iteration of my business. Ashley Mansour, you can find her on Instagram at Ashley M. Writes. Her question is, what's the number one thing you are most proud of and the number one thing you would have done differently as an entrepreneur? And I really like this when we talk about pivoting because I want to look back at every pivot and find something that to be very proud of. And then also, what am I not going to do again? So I am most proud when I look back at my career. I've been doing this 18 years and I say this is I just mean entrepreneurship. Me being the captain of my own ship and me running my own business is the thing I'm most proud of would be building Social Curator. It's a tech startup and we've bootstrapped it and I didn't have a tech background. I think that probably for the rest of my life, I will be the most proud about doing that because it was such a big swing. It was a big skill swing, financial swing, personal development swing. I think that oftentimes, like when you swing really big and really hard, if it doesn't shape out the way that you had anticipated, it doesn't matter as much as what you had the courage to do and what you learned along the way. I think I will probably be the most proud of that for the rest of my life. Although when I say that now, I'm like, ew, do something bigger, girl. Take a bigger swing the next time. But until I take a much bigger swing, I think that will probably be the thing I'm most proud of. Things that I wish I did differently, since launching Social Curator and building out a holding company and sitting as an advisor and sitting as an equity holder and sitting as an investor, that has happened on the back of having the courage to take those swings. What would I do differently? I wish I would have built a tech team sooner. I do. I learned so much and I truly love that team. I wish that I had focused on data and analytics sooner in that business. And I wish I had created content with a marketing team instead of the first 3 years of it being solely led by my personal brand marketing it. And we didn't actually create its own social media accounts probably 2.5 or 3 years into that journey. I was leveraging my personal brand to float that business brand. And I don't think I will ever do that again. I will always use my personal brand to float businesses that I am an equity advisor in and that I am an investor in. I will be fully disclosing of that as well. As we launched Consistent 10K, was talking about on my podcast. I'll put it out on social, but it's going to be sitting on its own thing. And the goal is to start instating its own marketing team within 12 months of its inception. These are all big personal goals. So what happens as I've pivoted and diversified my business? Well, I'm taking the lessons that I learned from Social Curator by building a tech team sooner, already figuring out how do we add a layer of proprietary tech, data and analytics sooner. Well, when we started out this offer, as I'm sitting as an equity advisor, I'm saying, okay, what is the data we have? What skill sets and what lessons did I learn from my Social Curator to apply to, as I sit as advisor to other tech companies? What was the data I wish I had sooner? How can I make more informed decisions about the roadmap? How do I talk about and think about growth in terms of what we're actually measuring? And now, even though the Consistent 10K isn't a tech forward business, I am 100% watching our data and analytics as if it was, so that I can be a lot more strategic when we do add our own tech layer, and or how are we projecting our hiring and how are we projecting our revenue forecast? Well, when we have data and analytics, we make a heck of a lot more informed decisions on the back of that. Lastly, the thing I learned with Social Curator was to create content with a marketing team. That's why we're doing it much sooner on the back of the Consistent 10K team. All right. Okay, let's go into Christy.Grieve. Thank you for your question. Was there a pivotal moment where you stopped playing small and said, I'm all in? I had just mentioned the start of our holding company, and that happened in the year 2023. 2022 was an extraordinarily hard year for me. I look back at that year, and I began that year with a word of the year, like I always do. And the word of the year for 2022 was trust. And when I realized that was my word of the year in January of 2022, I was like, oh God, I don't want to trust. Because when somebody ever looks across from you and says trust, you know you're going to be in for a wild ride. There's this scene in Aladdin. Like, am I really going to quote a Disney movie? Yes, I am, because Aladdin puts out his hand and he asks Princess Jasmine to get on this wild carpet ride. And he asks her, do you trust me? And she replies, what? And he looks at her with like these big, besotted, wide eyes and says, do you trust me? And she places his hand in his and they go on this one magical wild ride. That's not life, okay? Because when, like God, the universe, people are asking, do you trust me? You're like, oh no, please no. And whether or not you put your hand in that other person's hand, you're going to get on that wild carpet ride. So 2022 was a year that I hope to never repeat again. It was that hard. So when 2023 rolls around and the word that downloads for me, my word of the year, it was rebirth. And rebirth was an opportunity to recreate and become somebody new. I knew that that was the year of a major pivot. Even if I didn't want to, it was being called of me. So I listed all of the lessons that I had learned the previous 6 and 7 years. And then I took action. I've said it before in the podcast. What is a lesson? A lesson isn't something that you learn, that you read about in a book or you listen to on a podcast, or a lesson is not a video that you watch. A lesson is being in the same or similar situation and choosing a different action. That's the lesson. A lesson isn't something you know. A lesson is something you do. So in 2023, when my word of the year was rebirth and I decided to list my lessons and take different actions, what happened was I was going to lessen my owner dependency. That what happened was if I want to earn the right to a pivot, I was too entrenched in social curator and it had become very wildly weighted upon me. So what was I going to do? I was going to lessen owner dependency. And I don't even have to break down what that was because I just broke it down for you in the previous slides. So I needed to handle and hand all operations to the team. Essentially, I needed to work myself out of a job so that they can run, they can excel, and they can build the business. So that in 2023, I spent a year working myself out of every single role that I was doing in that organization so that that 7-figure business could run with a powerful team and not me at the helm. So when 2024 came around, my word of the year was independence. And at first I was really scared of that idea because independence usually meant for me like doing it on your own. And what I realized I'll never forget, I was really frustrated. I was very scared. I didn't want that word. And I kept on pushing that word away. I was like, no, I don't want that word. I don't want that word. And I was walking through South Coast Plaza, which is basically a mall in Orange County. But out here, you can't use the word. Like in Newport Beach, it's like to call something a mall is to degrade it. So it's either Fashion Island or the plaza. So anyway, I'm walking through South Coast Plaza and there right by the carousel amongst these very large balloons, I'm walking and it hits me like a ton of bricks. Independence is not doing it alone. Independence was doing it my own way. So once I had lessened my owner dependency and had a year of rebirth, I became a new person. And then I was going to be independent, not on my own, but to do it my own way. And then I realized that the way that I was really going to scale my business was to expand my network. I was going to do things differently. I was going to meet new people and I was going to make new decisions. Whether or not those new decisions were going to be favorable, I had no idea, but I was sure as heck willing to try. And once I started expanding my network very strategically, I started having time to look at educational foresight. What was changing in the industry? If you have a digital business, now a lot of the people that I serve, a lot of my skill sets are people who have service-based industries, service-based businesses, and they want to diversify their service-based business with a digital arm of it. That's a lot of people who I serve, or people who have created sole online education businesses. So these two arms of the large people that I serve, and I realized, whoa, there is a big change in the industry that's happening. Now, you better be the first to it and you better create content around those changes and you better build a business and an offer that speaks directly to that. So what did I do? I started building in collaboration. I started building in collaboration with other people who I sat as an advisor to. I started having conversations. One of the businesses that I sit as an equity advisor is called MemberUp. It is a membership platform. And Amy Sangster is the founder and CEO. And she and I had a lot of conversations around the future of business, around online education, around system-based businesses that have a digital arm to it. And we were like, that's the freaking future. What are we going to do? How do we build together to build and answer what that is for future offers? Okay. So we get to this point and you might be asking yourself, but what does this have to do with playing small, Jasmine? The question was playing small. Why are we talking about your words of the year? Why are we talking about the future of education? Was because in 2025, my word of the year was flow and not, go with the flow. I hated that. I was like, flow? I don't go with anything. No, it was to choose flow. That for the last 18 years of building a business, I have been pushing. And this year, I was inviting the energy of being pulled. I was going to be pulled to bigger and stronger and more strategic opportunities if I let myself. And that was flow. That I don't have to go with the flow. I'm going to choose flow. I'm going to choose partnerships. I'm going to choose offers. I am going to choose what comes to me very carefully and strategically, not just on intuition, but based on a litany of experience. What have I gone through to get me to this point? What am I not going to repeat again in my business? How am I going to build bigger and better this time? Because I'm not a newbie. I have done this. Do I have the wherewithal to trust myself that when I pivot, I can do it better the next time? So what did 2025 year of flow look like for me? I built a mastermind of 27-figure female entrepreneurs, and it was all flow. Flow for me was launching your biggest launch ever. That was all flow. That was having Social Curator. So Social Curator, your biggest launch ever, the mastermind, it is all sustained and supported. The scaffolding is a team. My team is the scaffolding to it. That was flow. Another year of flow for me is I was no longer going to be the main source of sales for any part or arms of my holding company. This year we built a sales team. That was flow. That was scaled high-touch attention to people who are interested on going deeper. It was no longer just about me. I was being pulled to that. So we debuted a new offer called the Consistent 10K, and we also created a lot of new connections because of how amazing the results have been and the community has grown. People are looking at what this offer is and they're saying that's the future. Whether or not they like it or agree or disagree, it doesn't matter. We definitely know that what digital education and digital offers and personal brand offers look like in the past will no longer look the same in the future. So we built an offer for what it will become so that we become the forerunners to it. So I stopped playing small and I built systems for what is big. And I decided to step fully into that in 2025. This systems of playing big, sometimes it felt like I wanted to say we were moving slow, and I changed the words around it. We are not moving slow. We are building differently. We are building a foundation, and we are building with intentionality. I stopped playing small when I built systems for big. I stopped playing small when I started hiring team members based on a $20 million business. I'm making investments that are so far ahead of my skis because I know that's where we're going. So if I know that's where we're going, why am I going to hire a team for where I am now? I'm going to hire a team for where we are going. That's taking a strategic bet, not because I'm on a whim or I'm feeling excited or like my stars told me. No, it was, we built a system for big. Now we need to build a team for that. That is building a business that is far outside of me, and I've earned the right to that pivot. Shelby asked, so I'm talking about this and people are like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot. So Shelby Seeley, so _Shelby_Seeley asked, have you ever experienced burnout and what did you do to overcome it? Burnout. Now, the quickest path to burnout for me is doing things outside of my zone of genius. So we're talking about pivoting. I will tell you that the quickest ways that I started realizing I needed to pivot when I was doing things outside of my zone of genius. So there are 4 zones of leadership. And I realized that I needed to pivot very quickly when I was out of alignment with my zone of leadership. Now, these 4 zones of leadership, it's not my framework. Forgive me. I tried searching for who is the owner. It's been attributed to like a lot of different people. What I'm just going to say is it's not mine, but I'm sharing it here with you. The 4 zones of leadership. This is how you know when it's time for you to pivot. These are the inklings and underlings that I've learned for myself. 4 zones of leadership. Number 1, incapable. This zone is, I don't know how to do it and I hate it. So how does it leave you feeling? Exhausted. You're in the incapable zone. You're like, I don't know how to do it and I hate it. The second zone of leadership is capable. I know how to do it, but I hate it. How does it leave you feeling? Exhausted. So there is incapable, I don't know how and I hate it. Then there is capable, I know how and I hate it. Let's give a couple examples personally in my business. Incapable, I don't know how to do and I hate it. Taxes, I don't know how to do taxes and I absolutely freaking hate it. What am I capable of? Well, I am capable of answering customer success tickets. I don't like it. I like reading them and learning. I don't like responding. Because sometimes I get in there and I start giving it like a whole full-on like coaching session. Well, this is the thing that needs to happen. No. They're asking basic questions. We have a team who could really facilitate and support that. The third zone of leadership is excellence. Excellence is, I'm good at it, but I don't like it. And when you're good at something and you don't like it, how does it leave you feeling? Like you're tired, like it's very heavy. I'm going to be honest with you. My zone of excellence is social marketing, is creating content. My zone of excellence is creating content. My zone of excellence is creating social marketing. I'm good at it. I don't like it. When I create content, it feels very tiring and it feels very heavy, but I do it because I'm excellent at it. The fourth zone of leadership is genius. Your zone of genius. I am the best at this. And when you are doing what you are the best at, how does it leave you feeling? Like time doesn't exist. It feels like you can go on forever. It feels like it's life-giving. So what's my zone of genius? Strategy. I can strategize 48 hours in a row and be like, let's get going. Let's do it again. Whenever I'm like plotting out a strategy for one of our businesses, I will lift my head from the desk, like when I'm just having the head down doing all the work. And I'm like, where did the last 6 hours go? It literally feels like 6 minutes. And so I realized that it's time for me to pivot when I was getting very burnt out, when I was doing things that were outside of my zone of genius. So in 2022, what you're looking at is my zone distribution. In 2022, I was doing 25% of my time, it was incapable. I didn't know how to do it and I hated it. 20% of my time, I was doing things that I was capable of. I knew how to do it and I hated doing it. 45% of my time was in my zone of excellence. Like I was good at it. It just felt very heavy to me. And 10% of my time was in my zone of genius. It was not lost on me that in 2022, I was completely burnt out. My mentor said that burnout is just a sign that you haven't been getting enough of wins in a row. I will tell you that in 2022, it felt like I couldn't get a freaking win. It was a year of no win. On top of not getting wins, I was doing things I was completely incapable of doing. I was doing things that I was capable of doing and I just hated it. I was doing things I was excellent at and it just felt so dang heavy. And in my zone of genius, I was barely hanging on by a thread. So let me tell you that statistically, this is what the professionals, this is what the leaders say. Your optimal leadership zone distribution, you should be doing 0 that you're incapable of. You should be doing 0 that you're capable of. You should be doing about 20% of the things that you're excellent at, and 80% of your time should be in your zone of genius. I am telling you that if I spent 80% of my time in my zone of genius, I would feel like $1 billion. The lesson I learned after 2022 is get out of the incapable, get out of the capable, and start really lessening what you're excellent at. I will be my next best version when I am in my zone of genius. In 2022, I wasn't burnt out. I was just not in my zone of genius. And that's when I knew you need to pivot. The pivot was being thrusted upon me. A lesson I learned in 2022 is I am not going to wait for the pivot to be thrusted on me anymore. Every time in my life, in my career, I was the one who decided to pivot. And in 2022, the pivot forced herself on me and said, wake up. This ain't it, baby boo. This ain't it. I once had a friend describe that life will come to you in a series of sets and expectations and will call you in 3 different ways. You will either get a nudge. Hey girl, it's time to change. Hey girl, it's time to change. And if you don't listen to the nudge, you're going to get a knock. Hey, open the door. It's time to change. It's change time. And if you don't listen to the nudge, and if you don't listen to the knock, you're going to get hit with the rhino. You don't want to get hit by a rhino. In 2022, I got hit by a rhino. And I was like, this won't happen again. I'm going to listen to life's nudges, and I'm going to have the courage to be the change, not be the one who had to change. In 2022, my burnout led to 2023 rebirth. And in 2023, that led to the pivot. And it was a pivot that I had earned. I had earned it by lessening owner dependency. I had earned it by being consistent. I had earned it by putting in the reps. I had earned it by learning the lesson and taking an action and getting a result. I had earned it by simply showing up the way I needed to, even when I didn't want to. I wasn't earning my pivot because I was over it. I was earning my pivot because I had operationalized it. So many people will throw in a towel to a business that had so much potential. So I've seen a lot of people throwing a towel on a business that's making money, but it's just taking so much of their time. Oh my God. If you have something that is making you money, you owe it to the business to put somebody else in it to have it continue making money. So you're pocketing it. You're taking the cream off the top based on all of the years and the hard work that you had done. Do not give up on the business. Operationalize the business. That's the hard work. Do the hard work so that you earn your pivot, so that you end up on the other side stronger and better, so that you take the lessons you've learned and you move it into the next chapter of your life. This podcast was created not by me, but by your brilliant, amazing, beautiful questions. Thank you for engaging and talking to me on Instagram. I love it. I love getting to know you. I love going deeper in your business. If you are pivoting, or if you know of somebody who's pivoting, please send them this podcast. You will be a pivotal person in their pivot if you allow yourself to do that. So go ahead, share this episode. And I want to say thank you for watching and listening to The Jasmine Star Show.